With the playoffs just around the corner, it's time to break down what the Knicks need to do in order to advance past the first round of the playoffs. And I'm going to be talking about 3 things that I'm going to be keeping my eye on during this playoff run. All that and much more on the Knicks Digest. What's up, guys? It's your boy Dariel from Knicks Digest. So right now, I'm recording this on a Thursday. We are 2 days away from the first round of the playoffs, opening it up against the Philadelphia 76ers. And this season has definitely been a roller coaster, a bunch of ups and downs, highs and lows. The team looking like a complete unit after the OG and Anunoby trade. And then Julius Randle going down with an injury, the dislocated shoulder. Jalen Brunson with that perennial nerve contusion that he had against Cleveland. We all Knicks fans were holding their breath. We all thought that he was going to be out for the rest of the season. Dante DiVincenzo had a bunch of injuries. The emergence of Deuce McBride, getting Bogdanovich, Precious, Alec Burks in the trade. But now we're here. We are here to see whose name is going to shine the brightest in the playoffs, because in the playoffs, we all know that that is where you make your name. You bring your game, but the playoffs is where you make your fame and your name. And in my opinion, I think Jalen Brunson is going to have a historic, a legendary playoff run that's going to put him in the ranking of top 5 NBA players. From last season and this season, I think Jalen Brunson is the best point guard in the East, and it's time to include Jalen Brunson in the conversation of best players in the league. But before we get into all that, there are just a few things that I want to talk about. I want to get some things off of my chest. These are certain things that I'm going to be keeping my eye on during this playoff run, and things that I think are essential for the Knicks to keep advancing in the playoffs. So without further ado, let's get right into the list. The first thing I'm going to be talking about, the deuce is loose. Miles McBride. Now, more specifically, I'm talking about the supporting cast, but I want to harp on Deuce McBride because since the beginning of the season, Chris and I, in all the videos that we've been putting out, one of the major stories that we've been talking about is who's going to be that backup point guard during the playoffs. Well, now the playoffs are here. Whenever Jalen Brunson goes to the bench, who's going to be that backup point guard that the Knicks are going to trust to give the minutes to? Who's going to control the team? Who's going to put everybody in the right position? And also, who's going to be aggressive and looking to get his? Well, towards the end of the season, I think a lot of Knicks fans have been pleasantly surprised of the play of Deuce McBride. Deuce McBride from the beginning of the season, now some people might say that we just didn't see this from Deuce because he just wasn't given the opportunity. And when the opportunity was given to him, he just took it and ran with it. We've seen him go from a timid, someone who's out there on the court looking to not make any mistakes, to absolutely looking like he belongs on the court. And the reason why I bring up Deuce's name specifically is because besides Jalen Brunson, we know that Julius Randle is the second best player on this team, but Randle's not going to be part of this team anymore. He went out with the surgery and not expecting him to come back, not until the next season. So now where does that leave us? After Jalen Brunson, who's going to be that second player to help him out? Who's going to be that second player to alleviate all the offensive pressure? We know that Josh Hart is going to play his butt off. Josh Hart is more of a hustle player where he's going to get his points off of rebounds. He's going to be able to dive on the loose balls. He's been an offensive machine. Towards the end of the season, he was having triple doubles galore. But Josh Hart's game is not really predicated on offensive plays being run for him. He's more of the garbage man. He gets his points off of rebounds, like I said, or off of scrap plays. And Josh Hart will definitely come to play, but we're not going to be able to rely on him for points whenever we see Jalen Brunson needs a minute. Dante DiVincenzo is another name that comes up. Dante DiVincenzo is a little bit more offensively minded than Josh Hart. He's able to create a play for himself or others, and obviously this season he's proved to be a deadly three-point shooter. But now that Julius Randle's out, I feel like the Philadelphia 76ers, their defensive scheme that they're going to draw up, one is 100% going to be take Jalen Brunson out of the game, whether that's double teaming, triple teaming, or blitzing him. I don't know exactly what's going to be. But besides Brunson, they're also going to be focused on Josh Hart. They're also going to be focused on Dante. So take those 3 players out of the equation. Now where does that leave us? Well, it's been reported that Bogdanovich actually just got his wrist scoped. So he was dealing with a wrist injury, and he had a minor surgery, but it's expected that he's going to play through the playoffs, but he's going to be handicapped. So Bogdanovich, with Julius Randle injury and him going out for the rest of the season, we were kind of expecting for him to pick up the slack. But now with that surgery, and we don't really know what kind of Bogdanovich we're going to expect. And plus, towards the end of the season, he wasn't really looking like himself. Alec Burks, I'm not even depending on him. If he's part of the playoff rotation and he gives us good minutes, that's going to be a bonus. But outside of Brunson, Hart, and Dante, and Bogey, we can put him in there, who's going to be that player If none of those players besides Brunson comes to play, who's going to be the player that can easily step up to the plate? And I think with what Deuce has been showing us towards the end of the regular season, I think Deuce is primed to take the next step in his career, is primed to take the next step in his development and show everybody that he has a lot of game to him. And with us drawing the Philadelphia 76ers in the first round, there are going to be moments where Deuce is going to be matched up against Kyle Lowry, of course, the starting point guard, Tyrese Maxey. And at least Deuce is young enough to try and stay in front of Tyrese Maxey. But Tyrese Maxey is an absolute blur. He has the handles. He has the mid-range. He has a three-pointer game, which has gotten better since last season. But he could definitely take you off the dribble, break your ankles, and go straight to the cup. And Deuce, I don't want to say that he's overmatched, but I think Deuce might be able to do a good job of just trying to stay in front of Tyrese Maxey. And if Deuce is not able to contribute on the offensive end, the least he can do is try and affect the game in other ways. And then the other way he can affect the game is on the defensive end. And we're going to need Deuce to use his athleticism specifically against Tyrese Maxey. But Kyle Lowry is definitely a player that he's going to be matched up against. Kyle Lowry has a lot of experience over Deuce McBride, and I am certain to see Kyle Lowry do a lot of cheap plays where he's going to be tricking the ref and doing all these things where the ref is not going to be able to see. But if you're able to get away with it, then I don't know what to tell you. In the limited amount of times that I've seen the Philadelphia 76ers, whenever Kyle Lowry is not at the point, whenever Tyrese Maxey is at the point, they have a Tobias Harris, they have a Kelly Oubre, they have a Buddy Hield, they have all these types of players, these different rotational players, role players, that can take over the point guard minutes just for a few minutes. I'm not saying that they're going to start the game and end the game as being the point guard, but if Tobias, Kelly Oubre, Buddy Hield, if they're in the point guard position, Deuce happens to match up with them, they have a physical advantage over Deuce. They probably have a strength advantage over Deuce, and Deuce is going to have a lot on his plate. Speaking of Deuce's play, I just wanted to bring up some numbers, and I brought up Deuce's stats since February 1st because Julius Randle went out with that dislocated shoulder on January 27th. So I wanted to take a look at Deuce's numbers since February 1st. So you take a look here, Deuce has been averaging 11.8, which is 12. So 12 points, 2.5 assists, 2.3 rebounds. Not too shabby for Deuce. But if we break down the numbers and we get into the game specifically, which of course I did. So I brought up the last 6 games that Deuce played in. So we're going to start all the way at the top, which is March 18th. Against the Golden State Warriors. In that game, he had 29 points, 1 rebound, and 2 assists. He was 9 of 13 from the field for 69.2%. He was 6 of 9 from three-point land, 66.7%. The game after that against Denver, he had 11 points, 3 rebounds, 3 assists. 4 of 9 from the field, 45%, 1 of 5 from 3, 20%. After that, with Brooklyn, he had 26 points, 2 rebounds, 3 assists. 9 of 16 from the field with 56% from the field. 6 of 12, which is 50%. The Detroit game, 13 points, 5 rebounds, 4 assists, 5 of 12 from the field, which is 41.7%, 1 of 7 from three-point land, 14%. And then against the Toronto Raptors, 29 points, 3 rebounds, 7 assists, 10 of 17 from the field, which is 58%, 9 of 14 from three-point land, 64%. And then against the San Antonio Spurs, he had 7 points, 2 rebounds, 3 assists, 3 of 9 from the field, which is 33%, and then 1 of 4 from three-point line, which is 25%. So the numbers for Deuce have been really up and down. There were games where he absolutely exploded, which is that game against the Golden State Warriors. And I believe in that game, he played every minute except for 1 minute and a half. So he played 46 and a half minutes in that game. So that's just one of the things I'm going to be keeping an eye on. Now on to the next. The second most important thing that I'm going to be keeping an eye on during these playoff runs is, yeah, I think you guessed it, I'm going to be keeping a close eye on Coach Tibbs. Now, Coach Tibbs, since he took over the Knicks, well, I have to give respect where respect is due. He's been able to turn the organization around into a laughingstock, into a more respectable organization. So kudos to Coach Tibbs. We didn't make the playoffs the first time, but then after that, we made it to the playoffs, which was after the bubble where we lost in the first round against the Atlanta Hawks. Now, it was definitely an accomplishment getting to the playoffs, but the Knicks were favored in that series. I believe they were the 4th seed. Atlanta was the 5th seed. So the Knicks were favored, but we ended up losing in 5. Julius Randle was completely taken out of the playoff series. And if I'm being honest with you guys, I don't think Coach Tibbs did a great job in that series adapting, trying to put Julius Randle in a better position. It kind of seemed like Coach Tibbs, he just used what worked during the regular season, and then he stuck to it in the playoffs, even though we weren't having much success. And then after that season, we didn't make the playoffs. And then last season, we made the playoffs. We lost in the second round against Miami. So Coach Tibbs has been kind of up and down as far as praise or as far as criticism. But as far as this playoff run, This is a perfect opportunity for Coach Tibbs to be brought up in the conversations of best coaches in the league. Whenever that conversation comes up, whether it's on ESPN or if on these internet blogs or these podcasts, Coach Tibbs' name doesn't really get brought up. We got Eric Spoelstra, we got Steve Kerr, obviously Greg Popovich because he's still coaching, even though this season with the San Antonio Spurs has been a little bit of a hiccup. But Coach Tibbs' name isn't really brought up in these conversations. And now with Julius Randle being out for the rest of the playoffs, we know that the opposing team, they're going to be harping on Jalen Brunson. They're going to be drawing up all of these defensive schemes against Jalen Brunson. And this is the perfect opportunity for Coach Tibbs to show what he's made of. I specifically want to see Coach Tibbs put Jalen Brunson in the right position because I am 100% confident that the Philadelphia 76ers are going to throw a whole bunch of different looks at Jalen Brunson. They're going to double team him. They're probably going to triple team him. They're going to blitz him. They're going to throw everything in the kitchen sink at Jalen Brunson. And I want to see Coach Tibbs put Jalen Brunson in the best position possible. I want to see him being able to adapt. If Coach Tibbs sees that Jalen Brunson is being doubled, if he's being blitzed, I want to see Coach Tibbs maybe put someone else on the ball. I want to see Coach Tibbs put Jalen Brunson maybe in the opposite corner, opposite wing, and maybe somebody can go set a screen for him so he can get open, so he doesn't have to overexert himself and waste all this energy. Coach Tibbs, I'm watching you, and as far as his success in the playoffs, going back to the Bulls days, he was able to bring the Chicago Bulls to the Eastern Conference Finals with that Derrick Rose MVP season. They lost in 5 games to the Miami Heat, I believe, and then the next season, that's when Derrick Rose messed up his meniscus or he tore his ACL, and then Derrick Rose's career was never really the same. But after Chicago, then he went to Minnesota. He did lead the Minnesota Timberwolves to a playoff appearance, and I believe they lost in the first round to the Houston Rockets. He might have been there for like 3 seasons, and he went to the playoffs once. And then from Minnesota, he came to the Knicks, and we know what his history has been. So my second most important thing that I'm keeping my eye on is Coach Tibbs. I am watching how he's able to handle all of these different looks that the Philadelphia 76ers are going to be throwing, not just at Jalen Brunson, but at everybody else as well. And now, the most important thing that I'm keeping my eye on is, yes, that boy. I am talking about Jalen Brunson, the man himself. Jalen Brunson, as of late, he has been getting the respect of the NBA media. I'm seeing JJ Redick. I'm seeing Kendrick Perkins. I'm seeing Kenny Smith, the Inside NBA crew. I'm seeing them take back what they say from the beginning of the season where the Knicks aren't really looked at as one of the better Eastern Conference teams. Now, granted, that was before the trade deadline, but even after the trade deadline, you still had certain people talking about the Knicks and they're not really a contender. And now I'm seeing people take back their word and saying that Jalen Brunson, when he steps on the floor, he is undoubtedly sometimes the best player on the floor, or he's going to be the second best player on the floor. Jalen Brunson's play as of late, going into the playoffs, has been something that the Knicks fans have been 100% enamored by. We haven't had this type of player probably since Patrick Ewing. And yes, that includes Carmelo Anthony, because Carmelo Anthony, he never really was able to galvanize the Knicks and the Knicks fans the way Jalen Brunson is. Jalen Brunson, the 60-point burger ball that he had against the San Antonio Spurs was the second most points by a Knick ever, besides Carmelo Anthony, who had 62. But Melo's game was more strictly just offensive. Jalen Brunson, he has an offensive game, but he's able to make his teammates better. He's able to create plays for his teammates, which is something that we absolutely did not see Carmelo Anthony do. Carmelo Anthony was 100% strictly an offensive player. Whenever he got the ball, it was going up. Now, Carmelo Anthony is one of the best offensive players I've ever seen, and I actually think he's underrated as far as an offensive player and the way he's able to put the ball in the bucket. But as far as an overall player, as far as an overall teammate, Jalen Brunson is night and day better than Carmelo Anthony. But going back to Jalen Brunson and this playoff run, Jalen Brunson not having Julius Randle for this playoff run, the way I'm looking at it from different perspectives. On one perspective, I understand that he doesn't have his second best player next to him. So the defense is going to have I don't want to say easier time, but for now, they're going to have an easier time to target Jalen Brunson. They're going to have an easier time to slow him down. But from the other perspective, I'm looking at it as, okay, you don't have Julius Randle. And for all those people that have those doubts as far as Jalen Brunson being one of the better players in the league, and they don't have him in that conversation because he's playing alongside another all-star, now is the perfect opportunity to show everybody what you're about. You don't have Julius Randle, but you still have a good enough crew with you to advance past the first round. And me personally, I do believe the Knicks are going to be able to get past the Philadelphia 76ers, and I think it's going to be in a 6 or 7 game series. They do have the talent to match up against the Philadelphia 76ers. And of course, we got to bring up the fact that Joel Embiid is not 100%. More so than ever after watching him play last night against the Miami Heat. He just did not look like himself, and he looks like he was very timid. But whatever, that's neither here nor there. Jalen Brunson not having Julius Randle by his side, this is the opportunity, this is the time to show everybody like, okay, you guys can't use this excuse anymore. I didn't have Julius Randle with me, so I'm going to show you what I'm going to be able to do. Oh, you want to draw up all these different defensive schemes against me? All right, cool. I'm just going to break that. I'm going to show you my basketball IQ, and I'm going to show you that if you're going to take my offensive game away, I'm going to be able to affect the game in different ways, whether if it's that defense, whether if it's rebounds, whether if it's charges, whether if it's just putting everybody else in the right positions. Jalen Brunson, this is a prime time opportunity for you to shut everybody up, and I'm keeping my eye on that. And now we know that the playoffs are different from the regular season. Regular season, refs tend to call a lot, and the playoffs, the intensity rises, the physicality rises. So the numbers that Jalen Brunson averaged in the regular season, I'm not 100% expecting it to translate into the playoffs. But speaking of the regular season numbers, if we take a look here, Jalen Brunson, 28.7 points, 3.6 rebounds, 6.7 assists, shooting 48% from the field, 40% from three-point land, converting 85% from his free throws. So Jalen Brunson, up until this point, has 100% proven that he's one of the better players in the league. But how is that going to translate in the playoffs? Like I just said, the intensity rises, the physicality rises, the opposing team, they're going to have more time to draw up defensive schemes against you. So the things that you're used to doing, probably not going to be able to do it this playoff series or for the rest of the playoffs. And like I said a little earlier in this video, the offensive groove, just the rhythm that he's in right now going into the playoffs, I'm super confident that Jalen Brunson will be able to figure it out. I know the Philadelphia 76ers, they're 100% going to be throwing double teams at Jalen Brunson, but I think Brunson is a smart enough basketball player to realize that this might be the series where he's going to have to delegate to his teammates. If Jalen Brunson wants to be a part of those NBA conversations of being one of the better players in the league, players, not point guards in the Eastern Conference or point guards in the league, one of the better players in the league, this is the time for Jalen Brunson to show us all what he's got. So that's it, guys. Those are the three things that I'm specifically going to be keeping my eye on during this playoff run. I'm going to be looking at the supporting cast, more specifically Deuce McBride. I'm going to see how he plays. I'm going to see how aggressive he's going to be when taking his shots. I'm going to see if he's going to be a little timid out there or if he's going to relish in the moment and really show us that he belongs. I'm going to be keeping an eye on Coach Tibbs. I'm going to be looking at his substitution patterns. I'm going to be looking at his defensive schemes. I'm going to be looking at him putting everybody in the right position. I'm going to be looking at how he's going to be able to help Brunson during this playoff run. And the most important thing that I'm going to be keeping my eye on is Jalen Brunson, the boy himself. I want to see how he's going to be able to handle all these different types of looks, all the double teams, all the triple teams, all the blitzes, all the ways that these teams are going to try and ice him out. And I really want to see what Jalen Brunson, how he's able to break down the game and how he's going to be able to impact the game, not just offensively, but in other ways as well. But guys, I want to say thank you so much for checking out this video. Thank you for sticking it out with me. And you guys know the drill. You know the vibes. Taj Gibson for president. Jalen Brunson for all the MVPs. The deuce is loose for co-MVP. It's playoffs, baby. It's playoffs. Let's go. And until next time, I'm out. Peace.